I said the date. Now I forgot what the date is. Let's see. Saturday, September 22nd, 1883 is where we are for tonight. And interestingly enough, I mean, the place that we're starting is rather odd. But we were talking about having a guru and the importance of having a guru. And then he was telling us not to pay attention, or not to pay too much attention to the Brahmin pundits, because really they were just about money, and that they would often just flip through the book and not even read all of the pages. So now he's telling us, he's saying a nail knife suffices to kill oneself. One needs a sword and shield to kill others. That is the purpose of the Shastras. And so really what he's saying there, is that you don't need a lot of scriptural knowledge for your own self, right? I mean, let me throw it out there to you. What are the most important things you think that we know that can set us on our way? This is an open question.
What was the question, Swami? Sorry.
The question is, what are some of the fundamentals? Like he's saying that a nail knife is enough to kill yourself. So what is the nail knife of the scriptures for us? What are the little clips of 3 or 4 things at most that you need to know in order to realize God, according of your own idea?
I would think loving others.
All right, loving others is one most important thing.
Renunciation, desirelessness.
Desirelessness, okay. How about the one?
Don't forget
Faith.
your mantra.
Faith.
Okay, maybe mantra.
Give God your power of attorney.
All right, that would be a good one.
Nice,
Yeah,
Regina.
definitely. You could do that route. Absolutely. As a bhakta, for sure. How about that which changes is unreal, that which is unchanging alone is real.
Yeah.
Right? For discernment.
Yeah. Just associated to that, the world is impermanent. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we see.
Exactly. Or
I would say completely trust in God, that he has everything, she has everything in her hands, and there's nothing to lose. Whatever happens will be all right. Live or die, alive or dead. I think about in the New Testament, I think St. Paul said, something like something along those lines: to live or die, to be absent from the body is to be present with God. And I think that's just, I think this just total acceptance of, because we all know we are going to die. Okay. And we all know that it could be at any time.
Yes.
And
so this non-resistance.
Yeah, non-resistance.
Yeah, it's very good. God is everywhere present, always perfect. Yeah, those are good ones. Yeah, so these you just need a handful of things to in order to realize God. I mean, in one page of almost any of the world's scriptures, you get more information that you need. It's just a matter of practice. It's a matter of doing the internal work, right? And he says here in the next paragraph, he says, one doesn't really need to study the different scriptures if one has no discrimination, which means if you're not doing it internally, if you're not discerning internally. He says, if one has no discrimination, one doesn't achieve anything through mere scholarship. So just knowing this stuff isn't going to help you. It's not a matter of how many things you memorize or how much Sanskrit you know or how much you can parse a sentence, in the original language. It's not a matter of knowing in the sense of mind knowledge. We've talked about that a lot. He says, if you have no internal discerning going on, if you're not able to discern and use this information to find out, to look at your inner world. And this is the very important thing, I think, is, our inner investigation is paramount. You have to go inside and see for yourself that you are separate from the body, that you are separate from the mind, not as just a piece of information like, oh, I'm separate from the body. You have to go inside and do the work. You have to figure out, okay, what is body in here? How do I know what the body is? And so you start sussing out where the desires are arising from, right? All desires arise from either the body or the mind. And so you begin paying attention to your desires. You say, oh, that one's coming from the mind. Oh, that one's arising from the body. And you'll understand that all desires come from something outside of yourself. But you can't tell that if you don't know what you are in there. You know, you are the observer. So you have to experience observing the mind. When you're thinking, pay attention to how that works. How is that happening? What is it? How am I thinking? You know, when you think of something, where does it come from? How do you see it? You know, and you begin to understand, well, obviously, look, if I see my thoughts, if I'm listening to my thoughts, they can't be me, right? They can't be me. I don't have to listen to myself. And so you have to develop this inner experience of what the inner world really is inside of you. This is how we come to realization. Because when you've clearly got its grasp on the idea, on the knowledge that I am not the body, then you can let all of the desires that arise from the body go because they're not yours. You know, right now your neighbor is full of desires, but you're not over there worried about their desires, right? Because they're not your desires. So you're not paying attention to them. You know, it's not a big agenda item for you to figure out what your neighbors are wanting right now. And so the desire, your own desires, quote, have the same relationship with you. You understand that this body is just one of thousands that you've had, and that its desires are not your desires. Its needs are not your needs. Its well-being is not your well-being. That you are separate from it. You know, that's why Thakur says that death is like taking the pillowcase off. The pillowcase is not the pillow. The pillow survives the pillowcase getting washed, you know. And so we have to go inside. That's what this discerning factory is talking about, is you have to go inside and you have to see these things for yourself, so that when somebody says, hey, you're not the body, you know exactly what that means, because you've observed the body and you've separated it from your sense of self. You've paid attention to the fact that you have to ask the body how it's doing, that the body has to tell you when it's cold. The body has to tell you when it's sick. You know, that you have to close your eyes, sit there and taste that funny taste in the back of the throat to say, oh my God, I think I'm getting sick. You know, if it was you, you would know without having to query. So you have to go inside and you have to see these things. You have to start paying attention to these things. And that's where I come up with all these little experiments that I'm always talking about, these little exercises just to try and see what is this? What's the nature of this thing? How does this thing work? Because it makes the practicals significantly easier if you've been paying attention to your inner world and have been able to see that the mind is one thing, the body is another thing, and that you are separate and apart from it at this level. You know, in the end, we understand the relationship to be much tighter than that. That there's actually a oneness in it, but that will present itself during samadhi, during realization. But right now, for us, we have to understand who we are within the body. So he's saying, if you don't have any of this discrimination, you're not going to achieve anything reading about it all the time. Storing up more and more data about it isn't going to get there. The data is there for you to discover, to give you pointers so that you don't have to figure it out on your own. You know, you don't have to start from ground zero. You take this information and you say, oh, these things are separate from me. Is that true? How is my body not me? Right? You ask that question and you go inside and you study your inner world. How is it true that my body is not me? How is it true that my mind is not me? How is that obvious to me? You know, it becomes obvious through awareness, through a conscious observation of your interior world. You will come to see that it is in fact separate from you. And you know, I've just I mean, I've only just begun using that information to help with my dispassion and with my renunciation. It is once you've identified the separateness of yourself from your body, then all of the urges of the body become optional to you. You no longer think that they're your desires. When you think that a desire is yours, of course you give into it because it's you. You think that I want that. But when you've come to an understanding that the body is not you, when you've seen that separation, when you know the experience of that truth inside, then you can look at it, you can say, that desire is arising from the body. And then you repeat to yourself, I'm not the body. And so then that desire takes a distance. There's a distance between you and that desire. And you can say, this body has nothing to do with me. I've had thousands of bodies. This one is no different than the 1,000 I've had, and you move on. Same thing with the mind, and the mind's in a particular mood. I used this for years for trying to find my way out of depression. When I started understanding that I'm not depressed, that's the wrong language, right? That I'm looking through a depressed mind. The mind is depressed. Depression belongs to the mind. I can only be those three things, right? I can be loving, I am intelligent, and I exist. Those are the three things that I can say with an I attached to it. Anything else is a mistake. You can't say you're jealous. Jealousy belongs to mind. You can't say you're hungry. Hungry belongs to body. You can't say you're tired. The tiredness belongs to the body. So this is that discerning. Understand from where the desires arise. Understand that they do not arise from the I, from the sense of self, the true self. And then you can just simply remind yourself that has nothing to do with me. Those aren't mine. And things begin to really clarify inside there. And Thakur has another option here too. He says, if one has no discrimination, one doesn't achieve anything through mere scholarship, even though one studies all 6 of the systems of philosophy. It's like, it doesn't matter how much you're studying. If you're not learning it, if you're not digesting it inside, it's not doing that much good for you. He says, call on God, crying to him secretly in solitude. He will give you all that you need. Right? Just that form of prayer, that form of meditation, that form of inner knowledge, is going to unfold these things for you. So that your mantra is that crying to God. The repetition of your mantra is a cry to God. It's like, I want only you. I don't want any of these other thoughts, any of these other ideas, any of these other urges. I want you. So your mantra is a form of crying to God. Prayer is there. Just even any kind of inner silence is a crying for communion, right? Silencing the mind is telling the divine, I want only that, only what is real. Renunciation is a cry for God alone. Your discernment that he's talking about here, that's a cry for knowledge to God. And when you do it with that awareness of awareness, which is that cry to the divine, that brings it even more quickly, because that awareness of awareness helps you see the truth of something very quickly. That's why one of those techniques we talk about is having mothers sit there on your shoulder with you, and look at your mind together. Say, look at that mind, Ma, and talk to the divine, because that divine is your highest ideal. That divine will help you keep things straight inside. It will help you give you that structure for thinking, for discerning, for looking and understanding. So call on God, crying to him secretly in solitude. He will give you all that you need, right? Secretly. Why secretly? Because you don't want the ego involved in this. You don't want it to be an ego association. And to do it in solitude so that you're not distracted. You're able to focus. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to bring the mind under control, trying to learn how to concentrate, how to hold the mind on a single thought. Because at the top level, discernment's fairly easy, breaking the body and separate from yourself, the mind separate from yourself. But there's subtler truths. There's subtler things to know that you can't experience if you're not able to hold them in front of you. If you're not able to hold an idea in front of you and observe it from different angles, you can't know its truth. And so a lot of these subtler things that we try to discern, if you don't have control of the instrument, the mind, you can't hold it in place to study it. You can't hold the thought to study it. You can't see its nature because you can't keep it in front of your observation, in front of your awareness. It slips off and another thing slips in. So we're trying to learn how to use this tool, trying to find that self-control. Right? Now he goes on to another thing. He says, Sri Ramakrishna had heard that Ishan was building a house on the bank of the Ganges for the practice of spiritual discipline. He asked Ishan eagerly, has this house been built? Let me tell you that the less people know of your spiritual life, the better it will be for you. Right? It'll be easier for you. Because one of the most drastic things that can happen in spiritual life is for it to become associated with your ego. If you start becoming proud of how long you're meditating or how much love you're feeling inside or what people are saying about you or how many subscribers you have on your YouTube channel, you know, how many people are attending your classes, all these different things, you know, the less that's out there, the better for you, because the mind, the ego, will be less likely to pick them up as forms of identity. Because even though they are there, it's better to see yourself as a spiritual person than to see yourself as, you know, whatever the worldly options are. Even though it's better, it's still more difficult. And the real danger for spiritual people is if you start making your success in practice or the length of your practice and all of those things, if you become ego identified with them, the problem that you're in is that the tools that are supposed to be breaking down ego are now building ego. And that's a very, very difficult and dangerous terrain to overcome. And that's why the Swamis always say, don't talk about your spiritual experiences. Don't talk, if you have a great dream about the Divine Mother, or if you have a great dream about God or Jesus or something, don't go telling everybody as fast as you can. You know, if you feel a wonderful spark of love in your heart during a meditation, or you see a light, or you hear a bell, or any of the other things that the scriptures talk about, don't run out and just indiscriminately tell everybody, because that is taking something very precious. You know, if you have a spiritual experience and you hold it inside, it remains that pure energy. And it can bring your consciousness, you know, up the channels into the heart where you want it to get. And then hopefully, ultimately, even beyond that. But and Swami Prabhupada was the one that told me, he said, if you go out and you take this beautiful thing that's happened to you and you tell people about it with a motive of wanting to impress somebody or just wanting someone to know this about you, he says, you've taken a very pure energy that could have been part of your realization and you've crystallized it into ego. You've crystallized it into ego, and now it is no longer usable in the way that it could have been as a pure energy, as a pure form of understanding inside. And so he says, this is why he tells us that the less people know of your spiritual life, the better it will be for you. Now, the exception to this is that with like-minded people, you know, people who aren't going to be impressed with how much meditation you do, because of course you're doing that. You know, people who aren't going to be impressed with the little beep you heard in your heart when you were meditating, because they're like, oh yeah, of course that happens. They knowledge. So if you're with like-minded people or with your guru, these rules are different, because they're not going to be impressed. You know, they're going to know that this is a matter of course. And so with like-minded people, you can share these things. But even then, discern why you're wanting to tell them. That's the thing. Why is it that I'm interested in telling this person about my dreams or about my experiences or my inner knowledge?
Swami.
Yes.
Swami. Yeah, I just wanted to add this comment that it seems my own experience, whether it's something spiritual or worldly, there is always this temptation or urge to, you know, if I think I've discovered something or have some insight related to my work, I often have this urge to, you know, start telling people. which
Mhm.
of course then brings some attention to me and my ego. And so that's something over the years I've tried to keep in check. It's not easy because there seems to be like such an overwhelming urge of like, oh, I want to share something, some insight related to my job. I want to
Uh-huh.
share that with someone. So it then brings some attention to the ego.
Yeah.
And so I think whether it's something spiritual, you feel like you have some spiritual experience or insight, or something more worldly level, like something you feel like you have accomplished related to your career or job, there's still that temptation to want to bring attention and to yourself. I mean, I certainly experience it often enough to and there's also though a big downside to it too, that I realize that bringing that attention, and I'm thinking more so in terms of my work, is because what happens a lot of times too is then people become and I'm not saying necessarily me, but just anyone, when someone brings attention to themselves related to some career accomplishment, a lot of times it brings some envy,
Yeah.
from others, and and criticism from others that, oh, well, this person's really
Right.
not that great.
Right.
They're getting
That's
they're getting
exactly
more
what you're saying
recognition.
is exactly right there, Stephen. It's just
Yeah.
it's any form of egoism. It's always silence is always where we want to sit in general. Just that quiet space within. And any time that we want to draw attention or that we should always be discerning, always watching, because the ego is always trying to collect things to prove it exists, to build a foundation for this personal I, this small sense of being, and so anytime, whether it's worldly or spiritual, you're absolutely right. The boundaries are much bigger than the ones we're talking about here in particular. That just the way that we live, like, why are we drawing attention to ourselves, and why are we and it's good for why am I serving this person, why am I giving this money to this homeless person, why am I doing this, and that's good to know, because anything that's unhelpful, when you put the light of awareness on it, it will lose its power. Once you understand that you're doing something for an impure motive, just knowing that is enough, because it's not your nature to be that way. And so by bringing it into awareness, it will take care of itself in time. You don't want to get obsessed with it. You don't want to then stop giving money to the homeless because you're afraid you're going to be impure. It's better to give money to the homeless impurely and be aware of that impurity, because it will slowly work itself out. It's better to go ahead and do that and work through it than it is to stop out of fear of egoism, because then you stop becoming a servant. You're not going to become a better servant. You're just going to stop being a servant, stop being compassionate. So, but that awareness is very important. That saying that I always share, that Swami Prabhupada said, that the knots of Maya, the knots of our delusion, will untie themselves in the light of awareness. And what is that awareness? That awareness is your mantra. It's the presence of God within you. It's Holy Mother or Buddha, whatever your chosen ideal is. Do things with the consciousness of that ideal within yourself, and that will be enough. That will be enough. And confess it, to Mother. Say, Mother, I gave that guy that money because my friend was with me and I really wanted him to see how much I gave. Then you're aware of it and you've confessed it. But that's what the whole point of confession is to bring awareness of the things that we tend to like to push out of our consciousness, push out of our mind. But we want to bring these things into our awareness, into the light. And once that light is shining on it, they will die. That will be up to the Mother how long that will take. So you don't have to continually to worry about it. You don't have to hold on to the panic of, oh my God, I'm impure. You just shine the light on it and keep going, right? Shine the light on it and keep going. Devotees, and so he says, so the less people know about your spiritual life, the better it will be for you. Devotees endowed with sattva meditate in a secluded corner or in a forest, or withdraw into the mind. Sometimes they meditate inside the mosquito net, right? Because they just don't want it to be a big thing, right? You know, this is something to know. I always joke about that time that I was sitting in the shrine in Washington, D.C. You know, I went in during the day. It wasn't a meditation time. I just went in to do some more meditation on my own. And I was sitting in there doing my practice, and I heard the back door of the temple of the auditorium open, and I heard somebody come in. And I was just instantly aware of how happy I was that somebody had stumbled into the temple and found me meditating at a time when I didn't have to be meditating, you know, and I just saw, wow, the ego is just always waiting, you know, always waiting for anything that it can eat, anything that it can add to itself and, you know, broadcast something positive about itself or something big about itself. So, you know, this is why Jesus tells you to go into the closet to say your prayers. You know, don't, not like the publican, you stand on the front steps of the temple yelling out your prayer, you know, reciting your scriptures out loud, whatever it is. So now and then Ishan invited Hazra to his house. Hazra had a craze for outward purity. Sri Ramakrishna often discouraged him in this. Master to Ishan, let me tell you another thing. Don't be over fastidious about outward purity, right? Don't broadcast your vegetarianism. don't broadcast you know, all of these oh no, I don't swear. Oh no, I haven't had a drink in 40 years. You know, don't make a show of your spiritual life. Don't broadcast your spiritual renunciations and discernments and practices. You know, don't make them a thing. He says, let me tell you another thing. Don't be over fastidious about outward purity. Once a sadhu felt very thirsty, a holy man. A water carrier was carrying water in his skin water bag and offered the water to the holy man. The sadhu asked if the skin was clean. The carrier said, revered sir, my skin bag is perfectly clean, but inside your skin are all sorts of filthy things. That is why I can ask you to drink water from my skin. It won't injure you. By your skin, the carrier meant the body, the belly, and so forth. Have faith in the name of God. Then you won't need to go to holy places. Sri Ramakrishna sang, intoxicated with divine fervor. Why should I go to Ganga or Gaya, to Kashi, Kanchi, or Prabhas, so long as I can breathe my last with Kali's name upon my lips? Right? You are the temple. This body of yours is is your primary temple. It's where you primarily do your worship. And if you can do your worship within the temple and make sure that all the things that you're offering on the fire of this temple, which is what? Everything that goes into your senses, the things that you look at, the things that you listen to, the things that you talk about, the things that you feel and touch. If you make sure that those things are pure and you regulate them and you put those on the fire of the offering in your temple, this body, then the atmosphere that you're hoping to find in all these holy places, the pilgrimage places that you're going to, will exist within you. You will have that silent, sacred space within you. You will have that inner peace, that inner solitude within you. You won't need these external places. That's what he's saying here. It's like, you know, if you've got these things within you, there's no need to go to places for it, to go to get it from other things. You know, he's not saying you don't do those things. He's just saying, don't think that that's the point, that you have to go to all these holy places in order to be holy, that you have to meet all these holy swamis, and you don't have to sit in the company of all these different sadhus. And you can see these things happen. You know, at 25 years in the monastery, you know, I've listened to devotees catalog all of the great swamis that have stayed at their house, or that have been in their car, or have sat on that particular chair. You know, all of these catalogings of these external things. It's just, stop it. It's much more beautiful than that. It's much more personal than that. It's much more interior than that. You know, we're trying to find this shrine within, and we're trying to offer with purity and sincerity and love within our own shrine, you know, and everything that we do with this body is part of that offering. And so that we achieve the sacred, an inner sacredness, an inner peace, an inner stillness, an inner holiness that we don't have to broadcast, because you will be your own atmosphere. I used to say that about Swami Prabhupada. You know, when he walked into a room, he brought his own atmosphere into that room. He didn't walk into the room's atmosphere. And what do I mean when I say that? I just remember once on Super Bowl Sunday, you know, 20 men devotees sitting around the table waiting for Swami to show up for lunch. And we were all talking about the scores. I wasn't actually, just because I barely knew it was Super Bowl Sunday, not because I'm a holy man, but I just didn't care. But all this conversation going on. But when Swami walked into that room, without him saying or doing anything, that whole room became quiet. People stood up straighter. They sat down in the chair to eat lunch, more in that kind of just paying attention. He brought his own atmosphere into the room. You know why? Because he was his own temple, and he was manifesting exactly what this scripture is talking about. Exactly what this scripture is talking about. So this sadhu that he's talking about, this holy man, you know, is the water pure in your skin? Is your skin pure? He's like, yeah, this skin is pure, but inside you is a bunch of filth. You know, you're not pure. If you were pure, you wouldn't have to investigate about the purity of this water skin. You know, it's like that. It's like, you know, Vivekananda was special in that way. Thakur said he can digest anything. You know, he didn't have to be fastidious about anything, because he had such a powerful mind of discernment and such a powerful renunciation that he was just beyond those things. You know, that work had been done already for him. And so we want to be like that. You know, we want to be like that. Ishan remained silent. The master to Ishan, tell me if you have any more doubts. Ishan, you said everything when you spoke of faith. Master, God can be realized by true faith alone. And the realization is hastened if you believe everything about God. The cow that picks and chooses its food gives milk only in driblets. But if she eats all kinds of plants, then her milk flows in torrents. Once I heard a story. A man heard the command of God that he should see his ideal deity in a ram. He at once believed it. It is God who exists in all beings. A guru said to his disciple, it is Rama alone who resides in all bodies. The disciple was a man of great faith, and one day a dog snatched a piece of bread from him and started to run away. And he ran after the dog with a jar of butter in his hand and cried again and again, oh, Rama, stand still for a minute. That bread hasn't been buttered yet. What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. He used to say, by chanting Om Krishna, Om Rama, one gets the result of 1,000,000 sandhyas. Once he said to me secretly, I don't like the sandhya and other devotions anymore, but don't tell anyone. Sometimes I too felt that way. The mother reveals to me that she herself has become everything. One day I was coming from the pine grove toward the Panchavati. A dog followed me. I stood still for a while near the Panchavati. The thought came to my mind that the mother might say something to me through that dog. You were absolutely right when you said that through faith alone, one achieves all. Right? Through this knowing. Sri Nisargadatta in that book, I Am That we're reading on Thursday mornings, you know, he said, when one of his disciples asked him, what's the difference between you and me? How come you're sitting there realized and I'm not? You know, how is it that you know all these things and I'm just asking questions? And Sri Nisargadatta says, oh, the difference is one. He says, when my teacher whispered in my ear, thou art that, I believed him. You believed you had many things to practice. You see, you believed that you had a long way to go. And that's why I talk about this assumption that you can enjoy your realization even without realization, in a sense, by making this assumption. When you sit down to meditate, stop assuming that you're ignorant. Stop assuming that you need to get somewhere through this meditation. Instead, sit down and enjoy the presence of God. Assume that it's done. Assume that the work is finished. And don't let the mind bring up any argument. Use grace to silence the mind. Say, shush, mind. Say, grace has covered that. Shush, mind. I'm not guilty of anything. Grace has covered that. Yeah. Or that other fascinating practice that we kind of stumbled upon a few weeks ago, the idea of using Thakur's mind or Holy Mother's mind or Buddha's mind to meditate in. Why call this your mind that you're using? You say these are the facets of faith that he's talking about. Assume them to be true. Just assume them, and you'll cover miles with a single step. You know, you'll cover miles with a single step. This notion of seeing God everywhere. This dog, of course, is beautiful here, but that poet Hafiz also has a beautiful poem, you know, where he bends down to scratch the chin of a street dog, and he says he bends down and he scratches the dog under the chin and he whispers in his ear, "My beloved, I am so happy that you have come to visit me today." You know, can you imagine? Live like that. Can you imagine how beautiful your day would be? You know, every person that you pass, you smile and nod. "Oh, my beloved, I see you. You know, I'm so glad you're here." Or you do help someone on the street. In your mind, you're like, "My beloved, thank you for letting me help you today, for giving me such a beautiful opportunity to show you that I love you." You know, live like that. This is the faith he's talking about. This is the faith that will melt a heart, you know, that will open a life in such a beautiful way. And you'll be a saint in no time. because you will be living in a truth before you've realized that truth. And what will bring about that realization faster than that? You know, by experiencing this truth, by taking a chance and letting it demonstrate its truth to you. You were absolutely right when you said that through faith alone, one achieves all. Ishan, but we are householders, Master. And what if you are? Through his grace, even the impossible becomes possible. Ram Prasad sang, "This world is a mere framework of illusion." Another man composed a song by way of reply. "This very world is a mansion of mirth. Here I can eat, here drink and make merry. Janaka's might was unsurpassed. What did he lack of the world or the spirit? Holding to one as well as the other, he drank his milk from a brimming cup." You know, see this world as divine and nothing will hurt you. Understand the presence of God in all things. And do it with earnestness and sincerity, and things will change their nature. You know, things that once dragged you away from God will bring you to the feet of God. Look at Girish Ghosh's practice that Thakur told him. He was an alcoholic. And I always like to make this point because it's beautiful. Thakur never told Girish Ghosh to stop drinking, because all of us know what we need to stop doing. All of us know. None of us need to be told any of these things, right? You know inside what you have to do. And so what did he tell Girish? He said, every time you pick up that glass of wine to take a drink, offer it to Mother first and thank her for the bliss that you think you're getting from it. Because if you bring the divine presence into the scenario with you, that is the light of awareness. And all the knots of your delusion will come untied in that light. Right? So through faith, we bring that light of awareness into all of our actions. You know, sit down there looking at your pictures on the computer screen, you know, getting lost in your addictions. If you do it with awareness, if you force the presence of God into that, you'll let go of it eventually, because you know already that it's not the thing to do. Right? Learning, we don't have to be told these things because we are that. You are the light of the divine. You are God in that sense. Your nature knows what hurts it, but you've pushed awareness away for the enjoyment of mind or the enjoyment of body. You've pushed your awareness of the self away because the self knows you're not the body. It knows that you're not the mind. And it knows that those desires have always left you high and dry. Right? But instead of hearing that, instead of responding to that in a healthy way, we push that voice away. Why? Because we're convinced that we are the mind. We are the body. We are these appetites and these hungers and these needs. Right? And we hide behind them. That's when it becomes chronic, when we start hiding behind our vices because they keep us unaware of the awareness that hurts us when we're hiding behind our vices. You see the catch-22. This is why it is so important to discern and and that's why they call it waking up. You're not adding anything to the equation. You're just being true to what you already know. God's will and your will, in truth, are the same. They only seem different when you identify yourself with something other than what you are. When you identify yourself with a body or identify yourself with a mind. If you don't do that, your desires will be in alignment with divine desires because it feels wonderful to love. It feels wonderful to serve. It feels wonderful to be compassionate. It feels wonderful to be selfless. It feels wonderful to give and to care. Right? It's only when you identify with something other than what you are that those things don't seem so wonderful. When you identify with a body or a mind. One should first realize God through spiritual discipline and solitude, and then live in the world. Only then can one be a King Janaka. Janaka was a king, a householder who realized God. What can you achieve otherwise? Further, take the case of Shiva. He has everything, Kartika, Ganesha, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. Still, sometimes he dances in a state of divine fervor, chanting the name of Rama, and sometimes he is absorbed in samadhi. So that brings us to the end of that chapter. So there's just this endless beauty that's available to us, through faith, through accepting these things as true, even though we haven't quite gotten there yet. The mind isn't quite pure enough to experience it and see it. We rub that out through grace, through knowing, no, I have permission to assume these truths. I have the permission of my beloved to know these things are true, even though they aren't apparent to me yet. And so we absorb that grace, we make room for that grace. We use Thakur's mind and assume its purity, and assume its quietness, and assume its self-control, even before we've mastered those things, just by faith. And the deeper the faith, the more sincere and earnest we are in that, the faster the truth manifests itself to us. The sooner we come to our realization, we have that aha moment. Oh my God, this has all been so true. This is all so right. And we're set free in it. Stop.